RPG a Day 2017, day 26. Let's see what we have. Which RPG provides the most useful resources? I wasn't even completely sure if I understood what this was going for, because the first thing that came to my mind in terms of providing resources in terms of a role playing game, I was thinking about stuff like maps or illustrations of stuff they're talking about in text form and things like that. I wasn't actually that sure what they were kind of going for, or if it's kind of like I'm not even completely sure. Uh, so I decided on going with the last year's RPG a Day questions again. And I landed on the 25th question of last year, which is what makes for a good character? And avoiding making this a very long, rambly video about characters in general in terms of storytelling and script writing and things like that, I won't go into too many details on that. I'll just focus on in terms of role playing, what makes for a good character in a role playing game. And for me, the most important thing is motivation. That's like if your character has a very bland personality, you don't role play him all that much, you're not being very original, you're this and that, the other thing. But if you have a clear motivation, that provides an immense story hook and a driving force for your character to move forward. Whereas I think the kind of opposite of that, if you flip that and say that your character has a lot of personality, he's very original, he's role played well, and all these different things, but they have really no motives to go out adventuring or to work together with a group of fellow adventurers or whatever the role playing game you're currently playing, deals with, whether it's adventurers or something else. I think the important things when somebody is making a character is to basically step outside of themselves a little bit and look at the big picture, because I think that's something that people usually get when they have also been the game master, where they understand that we're gonna be telling a story and we're gonna be taking part in an adventure and stuff, and you don't get too kind of clogged down inside of a bubble of just your own kind of idea of imagining your character doing cool things and stuff like that. You have to understand that you need to be doing cool things that everybody else is going to be doing as well, more or less. So I think motives are extremely important, whether or not they're very unoriginal motives, whether or not they're motives that are very simple. Usually simple motives are very very lush for creativity to step in, where if you give something like my character just wants to get rich, my character wants to find like an artifact that was lost when his family's farm was raided by a warlord, or whatever, and if you keep it kind of vague, that leaves a lot of room for the game master to insert a lot of their creativity into it. And if you want to be very detailed, that's something where the game master can take your creativity and use it more as is, and just make it his own by letting it play out in front of your mind's eye. But I've come across this problem quite a few times. And especially I've usually come across it when people have made their characters in a game I'm running without me being there when they make their characters. It's happened quite a few times where somebody gets excited about the idea of being able to play, and especially with D&D, because there's such vast possibilities of character creation in terms of the kind of variety in terms of how exotic a race or a class or something like that is. Because if they don't know that I want to set the game in I don't know, a holy temple or something like that, where I would prefer people play monks, clerics, paladins, or people who are very fitting to that kind of environment, with this kind of tone in mind, with you know, more, or maybe I'm gonna say that I want to make a kind of a film noir kind of game, but in a D&D universe, and set it in a holy temple or something. If somebody's gonna be making a character completely independent of knowing what the game master's aims are, they can easily come up with a character that doesn't really fit there, and then the motives are usually kind of convoluted and clogged up with different kind of things. Of what I'm kind of going for is that I usually come across people who get an idea of a character, and only after they've gotten a very detailed idea of that, if I get to only after that explain to them what we're actually going for, they will either have to like engage in the kind of script writing process of kill your darlings, where if the cool ideas you have in your head don't fit what we're going for, you have to be willing to abandon some of those cool ideas and come up with something different, or you're gonna you know, get so attached to them that you almost become defensive, and you want to forcibly shove them to fit the game that we're going for. And that's a huge failure in communication, and that's a huge failure in a lot of things, where it can end up with people with, you know, frowny faces, you know, as the game goes on, and being unsatisfied. With the motives, it's often the case where, for example, I've ran a D&D campaign where a player had created their character without me being there, and when I did get there and we sat down and talked about the character's past and personality and how they would fit into this group of adventurers that the other players have, it very quickly came to the point where, yeah, this character has very little motivation. It's like the character is chaotic, neutral, and it's being played in very like this impulsive kind of thing, where it's like, oh, my character works for you know, for a guild of thieves and assassins and such. So I immediately like suggest that, oh, are you motivated by money? Perhaps if somebody were to hire you, would you be willing to take on a job and thereby go on these quests and stuff like that? And the player is kind of like, well, if the job interests them enough and stuff, money isn't that big of a thing. Maybe she'll do whatever she feels like at the moment. Oh, okay. What about her past? Does she have family or anything like that? Well, she's an orphan, and she has this key from her past life that she likes to put into locks. So, oh, that gives good, you know, inspiration for you know, a kind of uncovered past life that she can discover. Maybe like parents are still alive. Maybe their parents abandoned her for a good reason. Maybe this and that. And is she like actively looking for the reasons to her past with this, having this key? You know, asking around. No, she just kind of likes to hold on to it, kind of thing. Okay, well, what about this and that? The other, she has a familiar, a animal companion in her pocket, a mouse that used to be a companion of hers that was cursed with magic to be an animal. And I was like, oh, is it someone she cares about so much that she's looking for a cure to get him reverted back? No, not really. She just, I like the idea of it being a mouse, so she kind of just hangs on to it like that. I'm like, so basically, what I did when the game started was something I hate to do, and something I feel like I shouldn't have had to do if I were to have basically. It was kind of like when I started to get, you know, kind of it's tedious in the character creation process, you know, going through these points. I kind of just wanted to leave. So I was just like, okay, we'll make that work. See ya, bye, kind of thing. Because what I did was something I kind of frown upon. Because when players have a concept of a character, if the game master goes in and drastically forces a change on that character due to story reasons, that can usually just I think that can just kind of, you're kind of pissing on their shoes kind of thing, where if they create a character who's like, oh, I can't wait to get to use my mystical nunchucks, and then you take the nunchucks away and that sort of thing, it's like, well, shit, now I don't get to do the thing I specifically wanted to do. What I did to motivate that character, who was almost completely devoid of any kind of motives, was that I had a villain grab the mouse and tell them that, you know, find me to get your mouse back and I will complete your training, kind of thing, because the character was, you know, someone who was trained to be an assassin but left the group that was teaching her because they were such ruthless, brutal kind of a League of Shadows kind of people. So I had the leader of the League of Shadows hunt her down and force her into completing her training by following his trail of tests and stuff like that, by basically following him, and she will follow him because he took her mouse. I know she would have loved to have role played with the mouse and stuff like that, but I felt like I was backed into a corner, kind of trying to give any reason why she would go on adventures, why she would hang around with the player characters, and why there would be any reason to not just, I'm just gonna go and drink, or I'm just gonna go and lay in the bed, I'm just gonna go and I don't know, just stroll around town. I don't want to go risk my life for these unknown other adventurers I'm with. So I have to like force players sometimes, and that's something that's happened multiple times on games I'm in right now, on games I've been in, and you know, a lot of like all throughout my past as a role player. And that's again something where communication is the key to take care of problems like that. But it's always kind of like this thing where if somebody has come up with a detailed character without you being there to kind of give them details of what we're actually going for, they can, it feels harsh to tell them that your character concept isn't really working in the idea that I have in my head. So when something as crucial as character motives suffer, and then the GM has to kind of force their hand, kind of like immediately when it's so nice playing this in this little village, and all of a sudden Thulsa Doom's forces just come in and kill all the NPCs you were looking forward to interacting with, and you're taken in to be a slave and a pit fighter and stuff like that, when your character idea was to play a child just, you know, fishing in a pond and being taught by his father about the riddle of steel and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden the game master is just time for adventure, goddammit, and just, you know, shoves in the storyline by sheer force. That's kind of a bummer. But yeah, I'd say the most important thing in making a good character in a role-playing game is to have clear motives, and that's what makes a good character. All these different things about giving character quirks and weaknesses and all sorts of different things like that make them feel very human is very good in terms of relating with the character and feeling they're getting into the kind of flow of being immersed and thinking, what would my character do, and all these kind of different things. But if the character is completely without motivation, that invites the GM to force motivations on them, and that can usually mess up with the players and GM's kind of original ideas and intentions. So that's something I wanted to kind of get off my chest, because it's something that's very reoccurring, and it's something that I hold myself accountable for being reoccurring, because it's up to the GM oftentimes to be the arbitrator of what we're going to do, what we're not going to do, what we will allow, what we won't allow, what will work, what won't work, etc., etc. So yeah, see you tomorrow.